everywhere. You do have to meet certain qualifications, specifications, standards, so on and so forth. So would everybody agree that moving forward as a consolidation in one department, that this is the way that the command staff needs to work and to operate? So the other option was to go back to doing it in districts, but then you would take away a lot of assistant chiefs and you would basically just have captains at particular stations, which that might not be as favorable for the transition process right now, and letting the chiefs have their roles and being assistant chiefs.
Mr. Wheeler, you're the one that answered things, correct? Dark is your comment.
Yeah, that's why it says JP. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and then the one that say BDM, that's me, Brian David.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, just real quick clarification. When I answered these, I was answering them based upon the votes that have happened so far, which I interpreted to mean that a majority of the board wants to move towards being the direct provider. So they are slanted. So I mean, I'm not taking shots at the people who voted against it so far. Just the way the questions were asked, I was answering based upon the votes that have happened so far. That's why I do say in a couple places, like earlier, this is not the only model, but this is the direction that as of right now, I've been told because of the votes that have happened so far.
I don't think there's much room to disagree with this, but if anybody has a disagreement with it, now's the time to speak up.
Well, I still think that the command staff, works the way it does. I can see one instance where there needs to be kind of an ancillary department within the station. For instance, the Cape and its water rescue aspects, and Camilla.
Oh yeah, you're talking about special operations.
Right. So well, it asks the question, command structure. Okay. Yeah. So each station, not every station, but some stations have some specialties. And so those specialties would need to be addressed in their command structure. And it would probably remain, that structure would probably remain exactly like it is.
That's exactly right. The fire chief and the command staff, your district or deputy chiefs and your assistant chiefs, they would come together and they would develop their policy and their outline for special operations. We're just trying to get to a basic level of fire protection.
Yeah, right.
Special operations is probably 1% or less of what we actually do. And so this is what we're focused on, but special operations would be addressed, and that would be done within inside the command staff, because us as a board, we struggle, and any ESD board would struggle to, between developing this and then understanding all the inner workings of it, much less diving in the weeds of special operations. So we're going to leave that to the men and women out there that already do that. But would anybody agree with that's how it would work for those that joined up in the consolidation department?
Overall, I would agree. My only concern is for the ones that don't have necessarily the time to go get the training that they're going to require, and the ones that have been doing it 10, 15, 20 years, that have been the chief for 15 years.
Yeah. So I addressed that, and I'll go back later.
You did, but you said 6 months to 12. 6 months to 12 months.
Yeah.
Sometimes that could take 2 years.
So if a person, there's a courage to be safe that can be done in, what is that, 2 hours?
Yes, 4 hours. It's all hanging right there. Yeah.
Okay, so their department already does this and participates in it. We're talking about a command and control and strategy and tactics workshop there that we're going to offer in a 1 or 2 or 3 day course, and the ESD is going to require that, or the fire department's going to require that. We have people that work pipeline and out of town here and there. I believe that if we offered it 2 or 3 times throughout the year in-house and tailored around these departments' needs, which is not going to be a problem to get the instructors and the people in here to teach it right here in the county without them having to go. And if we have stragglers like Punk and Evergreen over here, they're the last ones, you're just standing right there. So and I know I pick on you, little chief. So if Punk and Evergreen was the last chief over here, or assistant chief that didn't have these, and said, it just hadn't been able to work for me. It's been 8 months, and every time you've had it, it's been in Cold Springs or Shepherd or Bear Creek, and I ain't been able to get to it. Then us as a board and as the fire chief would say, when can you do it? And they'd say, well, I'm free the week before Christmas. Then even if I needed to, I would say, hey, I'll come teach your class at your department a week before Christmas. We're going to make every effort that we can something that we mandate to be able to provide because we know that they are volunteers and we know that they have schedules and lives around them. We're going to work with their
There's something here we have not
schedules.
provided. We still haven't got a clear SOPs yet. We were handed proposed ones. It's been a year and a half. We still don't have those.
Well,
So how can we move further?
We
We
talked
want
about,
people on the
Well, let
same
me-
procedures, same policies. It hasn't happened.
well, here's why it hasn't happened. Is because we have a force right now of 2 people. As the department grows and you get deputy chiefs and assistant chiefs in, the need for the SOGs and the involvement of it will grow. We already have a
Who
SOGs.
said we're getting this command staff? Who said we can afford that command staff? Are they going to be volunteers?
I don't know if you understand like what, that's what we've been talking about right here.
I know we've had chief.
The command staff,
The command staff is going to be appointed. I'm just going to throw this out there. I got 2 assistant chiefs or 2 chiefs I'm looking at right now. Chief Rodriguez and Chief Jenkins over here. They're assistant chiefs. If they meet the qualifications and standards, then Bryant, our fire chief, could take and appoint them as the deputy chiefs over the district, and then they will be working on things that the deputy chiefs will be working on and collaborating with the assistant chiefs that are underneath them and inside of their
So
span
there's
of
no
control.
hiring process here. This is all going to be volunteer. That command staff.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So anyway, once he picks them and then he's able to get them, because here's the deal, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Chief Rodriguez, but if you was picked tomorrow, Chief Matthews come up to you and said, "Hey, I'd like for you to be my deputy chief. Is that something you're willing to do?" You would say,
Yes.
"Yes." Oh, well, thank you very much. Do you know that with them responsibility and that extra bugle you're going to get, you realize that you're going to have to work on some of these things and help collaborate with the assistant chiefs that are underneath your district and work with them and come back and report with the other deputy chief and to develop our SOGs. Are you okay with doing that some extra roles and responsibility in this? And you would say, yes, of course. Okay. And so then at that time, then he would say all the right things, and then Chief Matthews would give him his extra bugle and put on his lapel, and then he would get to right to work on them things. Who does not do a good job or doesn't have time for it or whatever the case is, then they find somebody else that's able to do that. And that's
No,
how
we
that works.
voted and asked our chief that we hired to prepare and write those SOPs.
He did write a set of SOGs already. Okay. Standard operating guidelines, we voted and approved them, right?
We haven't
As they-
voted and approved it. Yes.
we
Yeah,
voted,
we did.
Yes.
the SOGs that he gave us at the meeting,
The
we
last
had
meeting,
in the community center, he handed us a set of SOGs.
We all voted on it, approved it. Denise, you can pull up the minutes.
On
As
June
they-
Hey,
16th,
listen.
on June 16th, the motion was made by Smith, seconded by Wilkie, to approve the SOPs as presented by the fire chief, subject to editing and modification. It passed 3-2 with Emmett and Russell voting against.
Okay, so we went against it. I mean, we brought it up to vote. We approved it. You went against it. Now you're saying that you didn't see it. And that- where are they at? Well, they're at and they're in place. And here's the thing, is that we could hand out all these SOGs and we could go through it page by page and so on and so forth. But the fact of the matter is the average board member is not going to know a good SOG from a bad SOG. Unless you're a firefighter with firefighter experience and training. The fact of the matter is the SOGs were developed by the fire chief, and that's what's going to hold him accountable. Either he has a good set of SOGs and is going to do a good job with it, or if he has a bad set of SOGs, it's going to reflect and he's going to do a poor job.
Right.
Yeah.
Y'all look what we got this place going.
Yeah.
Anybody that's parked along that side over there, I want to move.
Can you take care of everything?
Up over there.
Thanks.
We got a back parking lot back here.
What about right here in front of the station?
I think.
Almost right here.
Better put your high waters on.
If you want to, let's take a 5-minute break. We can move vehicles, get a drink of water, and we'll reconvene. Oh my God.
That should come from though.
Let's go back there.
You saw me asking for his coat.
Is this okay?
And I started to grab mine before.
Well, y'all got my blood pressure, so I'm fine.
Yeah.
The river
Get your feet.
And that it was approved subject to anything.
Oh.
So we part in there. Yes.
No, what's there has passed.
The drive.
There has passed.
So we're gonna go ahead and call the meeting back to order. So just to talk about the SOG and stuff, because there is a little discussion on that. SOG's last meeting, were passed, 3-2 vote, 3 people voting for it, myself, Commissioner Wilkie and Commissioner Smith, 2 opposed, which was Ms. Russell and Mr. Eldridge. The thing is that SOGs, SOPs are living documents, and they're just that. They're standard operating guidelines. They're a basis of how we get started and we go out and we address different circumstances and different incidents. Within that, people, officers, and chiefs, based on training, education, and experience, given the latitude to make decisions that may go inside or outside of that SOG, but they better have a good reason, a good excuse, and something that wasn't necessarily covered in it. Because we can't possibly write SOGs for every single specific event and incident out there. As time goes on and as the department grows and as incidents happen and occur, the fire chief and the command staff inside that department will notice that SOGs need particular attention in certain areas, whether that's response to vehicle fires or whether it's response to training and education requiring everybody to have courage to be safe, or a National Highway Transportation course. For whatever the case is, then at that time they'll review it and they'll add to or take away or do whatever. That should always be a living document. So the same SOGs that a department starts with in 20 years, it should not look exactly the same. So that's where it comes to as far as what the wording was, as far as being open for discussion and modification. That should be modified periodically as the needs arise for the modification. So hopefully that answers some questions. So on number 3 here, we got a long ways to go, obviously. As much as that was the intent of the ESD board to have the fire chief and the command staff, and then each of the subsequent roles underneath that meet specifications, qualifications, and given time within that. As I pointed out in the previous slides of how the organizational model works as a whole, I know that myself and then Mr. Smith, Mr. Wilkie agree on this. And so if, Ms. Russell, if you disagree with this, what do you think should be different about it? And while you're reading and thinking, do you have anything that you would like to see different about it?
Like I already made my comment, I just know we have some people who are that has very strenuous work hours that have been doing this 15, 20 years. As long as we're giving them the opportunity to meet those standards and not necessarily just spend 6 months or whatever. Like I say, it's going to be case on case basis by all means, in my opinion. But
I think it's something that we can work with.
yeah.
Yeah, I would say 12 months for most things, and that's going to be, I would like to leave that at the discretion of the chief. Said he's the one that's going to be out there independent and counting on these people to fulfill the protection of the people that we're called to serve out there. And if he has a chief that's not doing a good job and hasn't completed this training, the board's going to ask him, why did you pick this guy? And he's going to say, well, I thought that it was going to be better, but now I see that this, I shouldn't have overlooked him having this training or this qualification and specification. And then he'll say, oh, well, moving forward, we're going to do this and make sure that that is ensured. So, Ms. Russell, do you have anything else on that?
No, as long as the chief brings his selection and the reason for it to the board.
Okay, sounds good. This one's a big one here. Are there any organizational hybrids, versions in the county that capture the best of both worlds, consolidation and local fire stations? VFDs and ESDs they're free to negotiate structures that work best. However, my advice to ESD boards in light of Cold Spring Fire Station issues, that hard assets should be transferred to the ESD. The ESD needs the assets to provide the service. So which it is our responsibility to provide the service to everyone. That's where taxpayers send their money, and that's what our obligations are too. So it's not like this is a hostile takeover of corporate raiders who plan to sell off the assets for personal gain. It's not what we're here for. If the ESD is going to put money into insuring, repairing, renovating assets, the safest plan is for the ESD to have the deed and the title and sell ownership. And I just don't know a whole lot of arguing that. That's very well said. So does anybody have any problems with that or anything they'd like to see changed? City Cold Spring Council meeting contract overall.
One thing about that, we've got equipment from the cities,
Yeah.
and if there's some kind of swap or something needs to be done to get that car made, those need to be looked at.
Oh yeah. Well, that's part of the transition that we talked about
There's
previously.
equipment that cities have bought and paid for, not the ESD.
Right. And
It went straight to the volunteer fire department.
He covered that earlier, and that is that, let's say Shepherd bought Shepherd Fire Station a truck. That truck stays in Shepherd Fire Station. But if we bought a truck that sits right beside it in Shepherd Fire Station, and there is a bigger need for that truck
Yes.
somewhere else, then we will move that truck somewhere else. If it's a bigger need than sitting right there.
Yeah.
If there's a bigger
That
need.
is not what I was referring to.
Right, but the one that they bought, the
Hang
city
on,
one,
Mike.
stays
What was
right
you referring to, Ms. Russell?
The equipment that was bought and paid for.
there. It stays in this building.
Okay, Mom. I think Mr. Bill would get at that a little bit about working on the
Yeah.
things and things.
And everybody's going to have to just, I guess, show a little bit of grace to this. This is a lot of moving parts, but in a lot of ways, it's a lot simpler sometimes than what it's made out to be. And then there's a lot of, Mr. Peeler deals with this every single day. That's what he does. He's an ESD lawyer for his firm. I've been doing this a long time. So there's a lot of things that we take for granted, thinking that, it's just kind of general knowledge or that people see the overall plan and how things are supposed to work. So at times there may be a little bit of confusion. So we'll try to answer that as best we can. We've talked about the grant stuff. We're not going back there again. We'll save that for the meeting and just vote on it.
Yeah, that's the chief.
There you go. So this is from the Chiefs Association. What will the new organizational model look like and how will it work? Such as staffing, leadership, structure, org chart, geographical coverage, operation, and governance and bylaws. And this is something that we've already pointed out, and that was in the previous slideshow and in the overall outline and document that we produced and what we're going to vote on at the next meeting. But Mr. Peeler stated that based on the actions of the board so far, it seems that Chief Matthews would work on these issues in cooperation with the district volunteers and the VFD leadership. No one on the board is suggesting that VFDs just stand down a certain date with no plans in place for fire protection. So that's not any of our plans. That haven't been any of the board's plans so far. Basically, I stated that organizational model and roughly how it works is included in the outline that we just went over earlier. There's not something that was made up overnight. This is how the fire service works, utilizing the incident management system, chain of command, and span of control. Once the departments are consolidated, they'll all be provided with basic training that other fire service personnel throughout the country receive to better understand the basic functions of command, the fire service organization, the structure, as well as what their role is within it. And I think I've covered that a lot already. So, does anybody got anything to disagree with that? Verifying the process for selection of volunteer station leaders, volunteer member recruitment, selection, discipline imposed Station leaders be selected exclusively from residents in their current service area of each station. Mr. Peeler did a good job explaining Chief Matthews should provide plans and the SOPs and SOGs to be approved by the board, which we already started that process and the basics of them have been clear. I would recommend against any hard rule that command staff must be limited to only residents in certain areas. Over time, you may or may not have qualified people in each area, thereby necessitating the appointment of people from outside the immediate area. So if we're one fire department and somebody lives over here, it makes sense that they only volunteer really in Shepherd area. But if you turn around and there's a bike rally out in Pumpkin Evergreen or in Bear Creek, and we have a target hazard or the county fair or anything like that, we may need to facilitate some increased staffing at a particular station. And if everybody's trained the same way and works for the same organization and department, they should be able to go and staff a truck underneath the command of that district's leaders, that deputy chief and the assistant chiefs and the captains that are already at that station. If they are going to say, hey, I'm going to be in Shepherd for a few days, and they have the same training and they have the same policies, procedures, SOGs, as long as they can come over here and work inside of this station, they should be able to. We shouldn't just limit it. As it speaks right now, we've watched it, and I know that people out here in the audience and you volunteer chiefs out there have seen it, where you have a member that lives in your area that volunteers, and for whatever reason, they were no longer able to volunteer in your area, or whether that was disciplinary actions or they just didn't like you anymore or whatever the case is. They now drive 40 miles across the county and they go volunteer somewhere else, and they run hot across the county in a POV going all the way to that station over there to operate and run out of that fire station. So that already goes on, and that's something too we're hoping to limit, is a lot of the POV and straight to scene type stuff. Departments have already stopped a lot of that, but it still does exist and goes on, which causes other safety issues and concerns. The SOPs and SOGs, we've already approved them. What will be the required level of training and certification for each level of volunteer roles? Mr. Peeler stated that that's going to refer that to the chief and the command staff, and then nobody's trying to get rid of volunteers out here. That's not what we're trying to do. And as I stated, there's a lot of moving parts to the new department with only a couple of people working on it. The quicker consolidation occurs, the quicker the command staff will grow, and more effort and energy can be directed towards collaboration between the command staff and to achieve a true, like what you were saying a while ago, Ms. Russell, with all the ins and outs and a really thick set of SOGs. In order to do that, it's going to have to be tailored by more than just one person. Even though he is a paid fire chief, it's going to take a collaboration of his actual command staff to be able to produce a good set of SOGs that are more along the lines of what some people are looking for. Do you see any issues on record that would have not occurred with more training? So I think I understand where they was going with this, and as I've said already before, but I'll repeat it again. Yes, there's many issues that have occurred with more training, but even more so issues that have occurred with proper training, the lack of accountability, oversight, and good culture that can only be found in the structure in which we're presenting here. Multiple fire departments have experienced embezzlement well over $100,000 throughout the years. That could have all been prevented. Were caught relatively quickly before it went on in excess of months or even years. Injuries due to lack of basic training and safety guidelines, property damage due to untrained drivers and unsafe driving practices, the pumps being damaged from lack of training, not having adequate residual pressure, pumps and municipal water systems being damaged due to trucks driving forward while LDH is still connected to a hydrant. This is not blaming anyone. Some were done maybe out of low moral character with regards to the embezzlement and things like that. But the rest of this was all a product of our system that allows people to operate without the structure, without the professional qualifications and standards and oversight and accountability. So this is the system that we're changing. We're wanting to keep the dedicated men and women that wish to serve and grow the fire service in our county. That's what we want. How much time will volunteers be given to achieve the required level of training? Mr. Peeler said it's pretty standard. And like I say, all volunteers will be given more than adequate time. Again, we're not trying to get rid of anybody. We want to give them whatever time it takes in order to do that. But here's the next thing. If you have a fire chief that wants to continue to be an assistant chief in the department, and he needs a 4-hour course of courage to be safe, but he just can't find the time to do 4 hours worth of online computer training from wherever in the world he's at, then yeah, no. I mean, if he's given 6 months to a year to do that, then maybe the assistant chief role is just not for him at this moment in time. And he can just be a volunteer member and show up when he can. And we get it, everybody's got commitments outside of here. But at the same token, when we're stepping up and we're all taking our oath inside of this building here, that we're gonna do the things we need to do to serve the population and the public out there, and drive these trucks and $1 million worth of equipment and gear, and be responsible for saving people's lives. If they can't dedicate a certain amount of time to it, then it's no fault against them. It's a volunteer position, but at the same time, that position just doesn't work for them at that time period. And somebody else will come up and step up and take over that role and that responsibility. But are we going to come up and say, you know what, Chief Jenkins, you don't have, your courage to be safe, or your National Highway Traffic Act, or NIMS 300, you're out here. We would never say that. We'd say, okay, you're missing 300 because you didn't, it's an outside course and it's typically only taught, 100 miles away from here. We would say, hey, within the next 6 months to a year, let's get together. Let's produce that 300, 400 class. And we have access to instructors who are more than willing to come in here and to volunteer their time, or even if we got to pay as a board a little bit of money to get the people in here to pay and offer these courses to them several times throughout the year. What I'm pretty sure that we're going to see, and I've got some head nodding in the audience here from some fire chiefs out there and EMS chiefs, is that if the training's offered and it's what required, they want to fulfill the requirement because they understand the need for it, and they're going to do whatever it takes to do it. This isn't a hard line that we're coming in here saying, all right, if you don't have this, you're out of here. We're saying, hey, we do want this qualification and this standard to be put in place. Not only do we want it to be put in place, we're going to make it affordable to everybody, which is free. Okay, we're already taking taxpayer dollars and utilizing it throughout our entire system. Well, them taxpayer dollars are going to give you the training and education that you need to better serve the public and to keep yourself safe. And as you chief officers go, to keep the lives of your men safe, your women. Does anybody disagree with any of that? Will all existing fire stations in the ESD remain operational at their current location, and for how many years will this be guaranteed? Mr. Peeler did an excellent job stating the board has never been in a position to guarantee the permanent operation of any station, nor has it ever made such a guarantee before that the idea of transitioning to direct provider model was discussed. Every station needs to be evaluated on a continuous basis for needs of renovations, repairs, or possible replacement. Staff and availability is also a factor. I say the short answer is there are no plans at this time for discussion of any kind to get rid of any stations. The reality is, while there are no plans for that, or there's also no plans for how many years that station's going to be open. For instance, Funk and Evergreen, they're no longer in the station they originally started in. That's because the station they started in was built 50, 60 years ago, and it was hodgepodge together and bad foundation, water pouring in off of the street and roof falling in, and you could probably go on and on about the other list of problems. We had to scrap the whole thing. They obtained some land, ESD turned around and built another station that they now operate out of with, I believe we had a grant on that as well too, or no grant, we just built it out of paid cash, out of pocket, and we built the fire station for them, and so now they're there. Shepherd before long, they may not be in their current station any longer when a new station is built. But if there's a particular area that has no volunteers, where all of a sudden the volunteers just dry up in a particular area or age out or whatever the case is, they just don't want to do it anymore, and the call volume's low there, and the neighboring fire stations are already running that area's calls, would it be in the best interest of the district to continue housing that fire station, repairing the roof leaks and the septic and the maintenance and the insurance and the utilities and everything else when it doesn't really provide a service to the citizens? And so if you've already got somebody else that's adjoining districts or adjoining fire stations in a service area that's already run the calls, it would not make sense to any board to continue to pay that overhead every month when it's not providing the citizens with a service. And so at that time, the board would be faced with a decision: do we keep this going, or how can we staff it, or do we need to staff it? And then we move forward there. So I don't think anybody can really argue on that, and I hope that answered some questions there. How will the new organization model affect ISO and insurance rating for residents in each station in the current service area? Like Mr. Peeler pointed out, ISO and PPC ratings would have to be reviewed. The district's obligation is to provide the best service possible, not to reach out or reach certain ISO scores that are outside its control. And what I say, and I believe that some of the other board members that I've talked to over the years, and their thoughts are the same on this, is unless there's a particular community that already has a decent ISO rating. So if you had a community out there that, let's say, Pumpkin Evergreen had an ISO and they were ISO 1 rated department, we're probably going to throw numbers out there. They're an ISO rated 1 department, and what that says in a nutshell is the lower the ISO number is, the better tax breaks, or not tax breaks, but the insurance rates and breaks that they get. Because what that tells them is, them being an ISO 1 department, they have the ability to put lots of fire personnel on scene with lots of water, whether that's tanker shuttle operations or hydranted municipal water supply areas and things like that. Then we're not going to come in, and if we were to adopt them and they were to jump from a 1 to a 9, and then all the people in that particular area was to shoot up to the roof for their insurance premiums, we're not in the business to do harm in that way either. We would have to tailor another model around them, and particularly that would have to work in that specific case. But for the most part, if we're all around here and we're all sitting around the 9 area, I'm not sure what we're even at. What do we ask, Jeff?
I think they probably asked the question.
Yeah, in general.
Where's 6, 5 wide, and K to the 4th?
Okay. So, generally speaking, whatever the areas are overall, if we can keep them the same, we're going to do that. If we can't, we'll look at some other means and then regroup. So, especially when reviewing structure fires, you see the first arriving apparatus with the engine, the second, third, and fourth are tankers. But as we currently operate right now, and it's just happened here recently, and the week before that, and the month before that, and the month before that, as we currently see first arriving engines arriving on scene, followed up with multiple booster trucks, which places us in a serious strategic disadvantage from not only firefighting perspective, but also from ISO ratings as well. And the reports and things are pulled, and they look at just the personnel and then how much the type of apparatus that shows up on scene and its ability to move water. So in the city area, it's a lot better advantage because you can hook into a water source, providing you have a good municipal water supply, and be able to flow water at a fire scene. But when you're in a rural area, it's a non-hydranted area, okay, they want to see that when your first firefighting truck shows up, the trucks that come in after that should be bringing them water. It should be 2,000, 3,000 gallon tankers. But showing up with booster trucks doesn't help us in any kind of way, shape, or form. Which brings us right back around is, well, if we know these things, which I think some of us or most of us do know, that the tankers are the appropriate truck to bring coming to a fire when you're second and third due. But we're still seeing booster trucks, and it's just because either we have a case of freelancing going on by department members, or we have a case of freelancing going on by chief members, or we have a case where they just don't know that's the best thing to do is to bring lots of water to the fire. Either way, that's another reason why we need to do what it is that we're doing here, which is consolidate to get everybody on the same page. Does anybody have any questions or disputes about that? And what will happen to the name of each fire station and the role of the auxiliary? We've said this multiple times throughout this presentation. We're not trying to rebrand everybody out there. The shirts and the patches on the station. As far as I'm concerned, if there's no legal issues seen by Mr. Peter over here, I think that we can leave that alone. If we need to scrape the VFD off the side of the truck and just leave Shepherd, Point Blank, Oakhurst, Evergreen, whatever the case is on the side of it, then we can do that. And we want to allow the departments to still keep their identity as far as that goes. Anybody have any? I guess somebody will stop me there.
Here's a FRO question.
All right. How will the new structure, once implemented, improve fire suppression, rescue, and FRO service? As far as the new structure, once implemented, how it's going to improve fire suppression, I'm pretty sure that I've already covered as much of that as possible for this meeting. As far as the FRO goes, me personally, I know that right now, like I said, and we've talked about this in the previous slides as well, in the past, we had a problem inside of the FRO with the leadership and structure and the organization. Since then, Chief Cook has done a really good job of maintaining and operating and transcending that organization to where I believe that it needs to be. And apparently the state believes that it's on point too, because they still got your license, correct? So they're doing a really good job of that. I would really like to see the board shift as this transition process goes. Any of the FROs, if we can shift them back towards becoming just having one that works underneath Chief Cook's FRO organization for San Jacinto County first responders. I think that would be great, and that would be a lot less headache for the board and for the different first responder entities that are out there.
So I got a question on that. I'm sorry I know you're asking, but given that the FROs would be operating under the countywide FRO, I know we had this conversation, Brian, is that equipment couldn't be inside of an apparatus. So the equipment that the FRO provide, so for example, Pumpkin Evergreen could not respond in said brush truck deemed as brush 132 with Pumpkin Evergreens on the side or ESD 1 and operate with her equipment or with the first responders equipment inside of it and respond to a first responder call. It's not a possibility.
Well, that's something that we could probably look into when each department comes to the table for their negotiation and get some more feedback. But there probably is a way to where all of anything that's, if we just had the one FRO program over here and they're working directly with the ESD and the San Jacinto County ESD Fire Department, whatever trucks did have them capabilities, and if you were already a first responder with her organization, could come underneath that and the license in that way. So that's kind of diving into the weeds. There is a problem, the issue there, but that's not really going to get met or dealt with until people come to the table and say, hey, yeah, how do we tackle this issue? And once we find out who all the players are, who's coming to the table to participate, then we'll be able to get a little bit more in depth of that. But I've spoke some with Chief Cook, who is more than willing, and she's a volunteer as well too. She's not paid, but she's been running that organization as a chief over there for a while, done a really good job, and she is willing to take on them extra roles and responsibilities for the betterment of the organization model that we're providing as far as unity for the entire county. That's correct, right?
Yeah, give me some more money than that budget.
Right. What does it mean? Why and how will the assignment and the new structure improve service in our county? It would be very helpful if the ESD could share some supporting data, for example, for other counties showing the impact on results and benefits before versus after transition to such a structure, including the impact on metrics for response time training and reduction of administrative burden, as well as how these factors differ from the current metrics and what the ESD's view will be the target metrics in our county after the assignment. We recognize that a range of organizational models exist within the Texas and our 600 plus square mile county present specific challenges with fire hydrants, few and far between, and with its rural forested environment, it would be very helpful to present facts and figures showing that the best fit model has been selected for our county. So you just take what I answered in before. It says, with fire hydrants few and far between with this rural forested environment, we kind of already talked about that. If we have Shepherd pulls an engine and then the next 3 departments pull tankers because they have to, because all the chiefs are on the same page, and then we're dealing with people that freelance on their own, having 6,000 or 8,000 gallons worth of water show up versus 700 gallons of water is going to dramatically increase our protection and firefighting capabilities pretty much overnight. Mr. Peeler stated there's no such thing as a model. A majority of the board believes that changes are necessary to improve the provisions of the services, which is correct. And I stated that this question on the why, the how, and what data we have is a great question. The fact that we don't have a lot of data here inside of our county, we don't have access to the data, or the ability to ensure the validity of the data is even more reason for unification and standardization. Data is only good as the person entering it in the way that they do it. One major concern is that we all have heard the testimonies from department members, dispatchers, and from those monitoring the radio and the calls that are missed. And at times, nobody officially tracking them. We know that just from what we receive, and me reaching out to chiefs saying, "Yeah, we don't track what we don't respond to." No dispatch or the departments. Spoken with multiple chiefs who state that they've only turned in the reports that they are involved with. Once the departments are unified through consolidation, fire chief will have access to all the departments or stations, if you will, their reporting as well as ensuring that the data is accurately gathered. Fire chief can use his skills and his metrics learned in professional development and training, and that of his command staff, his deputy chiefs and his assistant chiefs as well. They'll be able to have access to this data and then be able to apply it to a response improvement model via fire service standards. Is there any questions?
Real quick, I'm going to have to head out to Kirk County.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for showing up, buddy.
Be safe out there, sir.
Yep. Be safe. How will it maintain or otherwise affect volunteer motivation and ability to recruit, train, and retain volunteers? Also considering certification requirements. Mr. Peeler added that volunteer motivation and recruitment is a major concern of the board under its current system. A majority of the board believes that changes are necessary to improve the provision of services, including issues regarding personnel. Certification requirements would be addressed like other personnel issues reviewed, the available personnel, their qualifications and certifications, work with said personnel to improve qualifications and certifications. And then so we already know that we're in a nationwide decline of volunteerism across the board. But also lived in this county my entire life, and I think a lot of people out here is the same way and have volunteered and been members of the department, chiefs of the department for years. We've also seen where you have a decline in volunteering under specific type of leadership or regimes at some places and some departments inside the county. And quite frankly, I've heard it for years, and it's no big secret that there's a lot of people that would like to volunteer in different areas, but they don't necessarily want to volunteer or be part of the programs and the things that they see that doesn't have an actual structure and organization that's a little bit more streamlined. We have members of our community in some places that also have certifications and qualifications, and some of them just don't have time to do it no more, and then some of them just don't want to do it and put themselves out there to operate a system that's completely different from the system that they operate inside of where they work at. And that's not all the cases, but that's some of the cases. So the next thing is that with everything that we presented here so far, we're talking about overall missions and visions, and everybody being called to operate to serve the citizens of the community safely and effectively by having some qualifications and standards and some training. If that's something that drives a volunteer away, that they don't have a couple hours a month to do, I would rather them just not do it and stay at home than to come up here and be part of a system that doesn't require any training, qualifications, certifications, or oversight and accountability, and get themselves hurt or get themselves killed. Because the decisions that we make up here is the ESD board, is the fire chiefs that are out there and the firefighters and the men and women responding to these calls. The decisions that we make are waged with people's lives. Not just other people's lives that are already in danger or having an emergency, but the lives of the people that are responding and working with us. And so while we want everybody to volunteer that possibly wants to, if they can't be safe about it and they can't be trained to a point to where they're safe for themselves and others and actually provide a good service out there, then it's just not for them. And I don't have any problems telling anybody that. If somebody wants to leave a department because they can't get a little training class inside of 12 months, then this just isn't for them. And I feel like that those people that are sitting out here in the audience today, you've all had full-time jobs and places to be and families and everything else, and you've managed to get your certification and your training and your education, and that will be what's expected and required of the other people come along too. View of estimated cost impact over time, considering grants awarded to each volunteer fire department, billing revenue generated by each volunteer department. We'll listen to what this is real quick. Okay. Specifically supporting evidence on how a single centralized grant application by the ESD will generate more income than non-separate grant applications. This would include grants that volunteer fire departments are currently on the waiting list for, such as new apparatus. Additionally, from a whole county perspective, we'd like to be able to answer the community's obvious question of how career firefighters will be paid with existing ESD funds. Cash flow analysis for the first few years would greatly help alleviate taxpayer concerns. Mr. Peeler answered, the majority of the board has decided that overall efficiency improvement is more important than the claim that the grants will be lost, and that's 100% accurate. That is the majority of the board's stance. Partial or full ownership by others than the ESD, and property to be assigned, and how to deal with conditions imposed by donors or from the specific or implied use of donated funds or items at the time of donation for fundraising campaign. Should these funds already or not yet used to acquire property be liquidated and to be transferred to another nonprofit organization, and what are the legal ramifications? Mr. Peeler stated that, again, we would need to see the specific limitations and conditions. This goes right back long. Pretty sure that everybody can agree that what I've already stated here, each area has its own unique set of issues and things to transition over. Will have to be taken case by case and specifically with us. And we're not going to advise any department to do something that's not legally correct. And if we do offer some kind of advice or legal, I guess, what would you call it, Mr. Peeler?
To the departments?
Yeah, like when they come forward for a transition, let's say that a department comes forward to the table and says, hey, we want to transfer our assets, we want to do this, we want to do that, we want to come alongside and come on board with the ESD's consolidation plan, at which time you and your office would look over their deeds and everything else. Anything that the ESD board would be taking on, would be looking over for them as far as like title searches.
Yes, and in this instance, I would, at this stage, I would almost certainly insist that you do a title commitment on every single asset, because that would make sure there weren't any crazy hidden liens or claims out there.
Yeah, I mean, here's one with, the association wanting the board to pay for legal representation for each individual fire department. And this is something that I didn't comment on this one. I had my reservations about it. but I want to see what the board really thinks about this one here. So what they're asking is that, well, we'll just read it. How will the ESD cover the cost of legal assistance for the VFDs for the process of assignment of property between the two corporations? To explain this question, just like an ESD, VFDs will almost certainly need assistance to guide them through this assignment process and help identify and resolve liabilities related to property. Just like the ESD, the VFDs may also need help understanding what are and are not real issues and what are reasonable solutions to complex assignment issues. Mr. Peeler stated, I do not believe the district is responsible for paying attorneys for the VFDs or the Chiefs Association. The VFDs are free to engage in their own counsel to review these matters. So, you know, while the fire department's out there, and this is where I really want the rest of the board's opinion on. While the fire departments are out there, they're their own entity, they're their own corporation. But I would say the majority of them are funded with excess of 95% of taxpayer dollars that come from this ESD board. So is this something that we would want to do, is to provide legal service for them to help with transition or to possibly fight it or anything else? I mean, I don't think that we
I
would.
believe we have the attorney at the board doing all this transitioning work, that he should be free to answer the questions.
Nope.
They're
Absolutely.
their own corporation. And this is
I
why
can't advise both sides. That's
Nope.
clearly a conflict.
I think that's where a lot of problems come in, is that too many times people, while they look at the fire departments as being their own corporation, which they're by their bylaws and their 501Cs, 3Cs,
Yeah, you got it.
all right,
1C3.
1C3, that they're their own entity. But then on the flip side, that too often we come back over here and we say, oh, well, yeah, we're our own entity, but we receive all of our funding from you as well, and we would want to use your legal representation. You can't be on your own entity and then still be a part of something or be unified. We are not unified right now. We are segregated. This board receives the tax dollars from the citizens of this county, and we basically contract out to each individual corporation that are out there that takes the money and the funding that we give them. They kind of do the best of what they can do with that. So for us to turn around and then take more tax dollars, so we're trying to move forward with consolidation to provide a better emergency response model and organization for the county citizens. I don't think that we should turn around and then give them more money on top of that to potentially in the future, fight it or go against it or anything else. So that's what our responsibility is. So what is your thoughts on that?
We're sitting at the negotiation table. I don't see why we're not as helpful as we need to be.
Yeah.
Can I make a quick comment on that?
Yeah.
Mr. Peeler said it just a minute ago. For him to advise us and advise them is conflict of interest.
Right.
Oh, I agree.
Now, if they ask a question that's a question of the board, he can advise the board on how to answer it.
I agree.
But other than that, no, we can't provide him to advise them on their procedure going forward.
I don't think it was him that was being asked.
He said the ESD lawyer.
A ESD one. I don't think it's the
I
ESD.
think it's what they're wanting to know is, do we pay for their attorney?
And the answer there, in my opinion, would be no.
That would be mine as well. Greg, what do you think? Jamie, what do you think? Do you think we should pay for their separate legal counsel for that?
I think that's just,
We want this process to go smoothly. If we have to invest, like you say, consultants and other areas that we wouldn't mind spending, I don't see why the comfort of taking care of an attorney for them, possibly 30 minutes, is really going to harm us that much.
If you,
Unless there's some kind of legal that can come back and bite us.
Well,
yeah,
It's,
Well, I'm just.
Go ahead.
yeah, it's
So
tricky. I mean, if the district's funding it, I don't know how even a different attorney, in theory, is able to advise against the agency that's funding the payments for him.
I think it would be conflict.
Yeah, that whole question, and that's where I was going with this, is I can't even really wrap my head around that. So I just wanted to make sure
I
that
think
I
it would
was.
be a conflict.
Oh, I agree 100%. But throughout this whole, and this is why that it's 2:41 and we're still here. We're not going to leave anything in time. We're going to try to answer all the questions that are out there. But yeah, so no matter how big or small something is, we need to address it. Me personally, we can vote on it at the next meeting. But me personally, I would not say that we fund other departments' attorney. Absolutely not.
If I can add some clarity to that, because I think that's may misunderstood. And I was privy to the conversation that was being had about that. And I think it's not, the lawyer representation would not be to argue any fact with the ESD. It was mainly for each VFD to ask their question to get legal answers back from a lawyer, right, that wasn't representing the ESD. So the question was, hey, what happens, and I don't know what each question would be, what happens to our truck when we give it to them? Are we liable for anything that happened with that truck 10 years ago? Is there a release of waiver? Those kind of like legal ramifications, basically for the Chief Association or for each department to be able to draft up a question and say, hey, this is what we'd like to be answered, and be answered by a lawyer that has the knowledge to say. And the fact is that maybe that would alleviate some of their concerns and have them sign on to the ESD's general plan or umbrella without so much fuss or muss, because now they've gotten their own questions answered by somebody that isn't necessarily representing, and no offense to Mr. Peeler, I know he does a great job, not representing the board, is representing the departments themselves. But I don't know legal terms, and I don't know if the board says, hey, here's the money for a lawyer, that he can, because I brought that up to the board whenever we decided to wrap this up. It's like, if the ESD board gives us the money to hire a lawyer, isn't that still their lawyer?
That would be, yeah.
I don't know, but I'm not a lawyer. Me personally, I don't know what instances or cases would even be involved in that, because the way the transition would look is that you would come to the table and say, like Bear Creek has already done, and Point Blank's fixing to do, is come to the table and say, hey, this is what we want to do. We want to consolidate with the ESD, and we want to transfer these assets. Well, all the asset transfers and property transfers and deed and title searches and all the things that can really get anybody in trouble with this particular instance here would be done at that table. Anything that happened 10 years ago that the board didn't know about would be on the VFD's particular member, and if it didn't happen while you were there, I don't even know what that would even.
I don't know the particular question.
I don't even know what that would look like.
I don't know what the particular questions that they wanted to ask. It wasn't how it was brought up in the conversations we had. It wasn't a, hey, let's hire a lawyer to represent us to fight the ESD. It was, can we hire a lawyer to answer some questions that we would like to ask the ESD lawyer, but obviously he's not our lawyer, so he cannot answer.
Well, that's a very easy thing to be done. Any questions that anybody has, they bring it to the table as far as the transition goes, and the negotiation is done between the individual department, a transition team, or the board, and then at which terms we say, oh, that's really, really great. That's a great question. Mr. Peter, what's your thoughts on this? And then he would advise us of what thoughts there were. And I'm not going to say that there's not a specific, that there wasn't something that was tied to multiple different grants or loans or this or that or whatever. Mr. Peeler, if he thought for 1 minute that, you know what, this department's going to need some legal counsel on this because we don't know who this belongs to or where this money come from or originated in, whatever. If he was to think for 1 minute that there was some extra legal counsel that was needed, he would advise that to the board.
Could he advise that to the board?
He would advise that to the board. He would have to. If we ask him the question. So if you bring us the question and we have any doubts or reservations about it, we're going to ask him for the legal advice.
It's not going to be advised you to advise us to get legal counsel. That's pretty good.
I just made a note to revisit that question a little bit more. I'll try to have a more detailed answer for you Monday.
I think the background on that was from a corporate standpoint. In a corporate standpoint, when you have a consolidation of two companies, you're going to have their legal counsel and the other legal counsel. And so that was the frame for this. This is two companies merging, and each company would normally have legal representation. That was the mental model.
Yeah, but I think most companies that are merging or consolidated, the one company is not funded completely.
Yeah,
by
I mean,
ESD. You know, when all your lights and your toilet paper and your firefighting gear and your equipment and your uniforms and the water that comes into your place and the building that was built for you and the trucks that was bought for you, when you're completely funded by that other corporation,
I'm just getting
I think
context.
it's different.
Yeah.
Only context.
Yeah, and like I said, I made a note to look at that some more.
In that context, I would agree with you. You need two lawyers.
Yeah. And me and you are going to go into business together, and I have my company that I've built up over the years with my own money and my own property, and you had yours, and we're coming together, then yeah, I would.
There is a level of that in every department that's funded in part, and some departments more than others. Like for example, your municipal departments that have cities, and I think that's really where the complexity comes in, where you may need representation on both sides.
Yeah, I'll get some more information on that.
Yeah.
I think I may not have
I
been
think that one
exactly
thing might
understanding
be
what they're-
though, if a department comes to the table to become a part of the ESD, they wouldn't want equipment lingering out there that couldn't be used. It would need to be assigned to someone.
Yeah, and that's
So
exactly
it wouldn't be necessarily a fight over that apparatus. If you've got one piece of apparatus that was bought completely with fundraiser money, but you're coming under the ESD umbrella, you're going to want to bring that with you. So I don't think that there would be an argument over that. I think that the fear would be if there's a hostile takeover, then, but even still, if there was a hostile takeover and there was no 501c and you're not being told as a fire department, what good is that
you're
brush
not
truck going
doing
to do?
that. I get
Yeah,
the whole
so-
entire principle.
so,
Like I said,
yeah.
the concept was brought up before the departments could ask questions to their
Yeah.
lawyer without consulting the ESD lawyers, and the question that basically it would save y'all money by not having to have all our questioning and all our, like you just did there. We spent money by having Mr. Keeler do that, where we could having a look. We can ask, you guys can ask Mr. Keeler, but at the end of the day, he's your representative. Where
Yeah, it's not my job
if we would have sent those questions to our representative lawyer, then you get what I'm saying on that side.
And
So that it
even-
would save money on Keeler's.
And even questions you wouldn't necessarily know to ask, your own attorney could potentially identify items of concern. I understand their question there now.
What we can do is we can look into it and also speak to some other departments that have recently went through consolidation process and just find out if there was anybody that was representing on the other.
The question was made with the spirit of saving the ESD money by not having to tie up Keeler's 100 hours of all our rhetoric questioning that they can say, well, that's not even a thing, let me just answer it. You don't even have to ask the ESD that. Here's the answer, here's what it would be, and then so on and so forth.
So you spend
Whatever
the money.
colleague you get, though, they would still be charging you.
They would still be charging, but I feel like if you have your own representative that represents your interest, or would give you the answer, what all I'm saying is essentially is that whoever's asking the question, their representative, they're going to feel like they're being represented.
Yeah, I follow you now, Chief. I get it.
And I'm not speaking for the board. I'm just kind of trying to add some clarification.
Yeah. No, like I said, I made a note to get more information.
So for moving forward, as we went through our proposal here, and hope everybody took notes, so we're just going to kind of scan and skim through this because we've already been over it once. Denise, if you will, take any notes if anybody has. So what we'll do is we'll go through and look at it. And then anything that anybody thinks needs to be changed or moved around or reworded, we'll kind of talk about it. And then we'll make them changes, and then as we come back to the next meeting, we'll re-present all the information, less in depth, obviously, and at that time, you'll have an email with this in your package of a revised version, if you will, and then we can vote on it as far as adopting it moving forward. So we'll just kind of go through this executive summary, vision, anything. Anybody's got any questions?
Why can't this be emailed to us at once?
Well,
It's in the original.
that's what I just said.
You just said, yeah.
Yeah, that's
We'll have to go over review.
no, well, that's the whole thing. And so, as far as the sake of, since we usually only meet once a month, as we go through here, if we can figure out what the unsettling parts or the argumentative parts are, if we can discuss it as a group and go ahead and know what them parts are and have notes on that, we can change it and have more of a finished product to look at through an email later, and then when we come together as a board, that we can vote. Then we can vote on it as a board and maybe make minimal changes at that point. But it's just going to streamline the process a lot more if we go ahead and do that now in this workshop. That's kind of the whole purpose of the workshop today, was to consolidate, get what everybody's where everybody's heads at on this, and find out what they would like to see changed or not changed. And the things we can't necessarily come to agreement on, we'll put to a vote at the next meeting and go from there. So I'll start with you, Ms. Beeman. Did you have any notes?
No, you can look at the end.
Okay. All right. Derek, did you have anything in here you've seen that you wanted to see changed or?
I saw something earlier. It's back.
Derek, did you see anything or just be
Yes.
Brian, did you see anything on here that
Headlines further down.
I think go back down one more.
Yeah, that's where current command staff are retained based on qualifications, experience, tenure, members, okay.
So it's also have physical.
So all members,
Well, all members will have physical PATs.
will have 6 to 12 months to get the training, I think. And we touched on that earlier as far as that can kind of be on the case by case basis as far as, you know, their availability to get the training and stuff like that.
I
That
think,
don't have to be, I don't know if that has to be set in stone.
I think we need to set it in
Yeah,
stone
but it's
to say 6 to 12 months. Exceptions will be handled
Yeah, case by case.
on a case by case.
Yeah.
Really want to put exceptions in there.
well, let's say that brings up a good point. I mean, overall, like if we're talking about just basic generic training, then 6 to 12 months would be good. But let's say that it's something particular that we can't have offered, or that something comes up. There probably does need to be an exception on there that I would put, just like what's in a lot of departments out there. I would put at the fire chief's discretion, and then we could ask that he just let us notify any
Yeah,
discretion.
6 to 12 months to meet training requirements, or at fire chief's discretion. That sets it. In other words, if there's something that is an exception, yeah.
The fire chief's discretion would be on extensions, right? The
Yes.
fire chief couldn't come and say, never mind, I'm giving you 3 months. He could just say, I think 12 months wasn't quite long enough, right?
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Fire
The
chief's
discretion would be on the extension.
on extension. Thank you, Denise.
And we wanted to give the fire chief the complete autonomy to do that, or is that something that the board wants to know about? Or?
I think he can have autonomy on that. I don't think he needs to bring bring that to the board. I think he's smart enough to make those decisions.
And he's not gonna make that decision lightly.
Well, he's gonna take each situation differently. Because there's gonna be differences in each situation.
Well, yeah, if it's been 12 months and they've only taken 30 minutes of class versus if they're on their last
So it's just,
slot.
it's gonna be at his discretion, and I don't think he needs to bring it to the board. I trust him enough on that. Otherwise, all right.
I
So
think,
the
I think if you-
expectation would be 6 to 12 months for the fire chief to extend based on circumstances.
Yes.
yeah, okay. I have a great question.
Well, you'll get it back later.
What's that, great? Carry on.
Tammy, did you have anything else on that one?
So there's, no,
Oh, I remember. If they don't meet the requirements, then we need to know about that if there's going to be a replacement.
Right.
So I don't know how we would phrase that in there, but you know what I mean? In other words,
Yeah.
Well,
if
the way
if they
that
don't
would look
meet
is if you're talking about a basic level firefighter, if they don't meet that requirement, then they don't become a basic level firefighter. They can stay within inside of the department if they want to under a different role or function or maybe auxiliary. But if they don't meet the basic level requirements, and they're not going to be responding to fires, they're not going to be putting on fire gear and doing these things. If you're talking about somebody that's already an assistant chief and they have the qualifications below them to be a driver, operator, or a fire truck, or to be a firefighter, then at that time, after 12 months, and they haven't met their requirements, but they have the requirements to be a basic level firefighter, then they would just operate in that capacity until they get them other requirements to go back. If that opportunity presents itself, it may be already filled at that point. So once that spot's been taken away. So.
right, all right.
And this is just something, a question somebody had. And for right now, I would just recommend this is something that we'll have to meet with the sheriff's department on and dispatch, and we'll talk about it. It would be dispatched by station number would probably be the easiest say. Or later on in the future, once we have an actual operative CAD system, so we could go a little bit more into proximity dispatching. So I think that these are topics that are to be probably had later on and less important
I
at the moment.
think in that neck of the woods, we need to add that the ESD is sponsored to dispatchers.
Now, what was the question?
To add in there that the ESD sponsors to the dispatchers.
Well, we already sponsor two dispatchers.
I'm saying document on this that that's what we do. We share
Well,
the costs.
this document is a consolidation document for
Right.
the fire departments.
And this will show a little bit more of our budget being spent on various things,
What,
including to dispatch.
right, what, I'm sorry, I'm just, I'm missing the point, like, what is the benefit to adding that to a consolidation document?
Yeah, this is strictly,
Also, at budget,
with
all of this.
This doesn't look at budget. This doesn't care about budget.
This does care about.
No, it
budget.
doesn't. This cares about how it's structured and the requirements for each of the individual positions.
And
It
there's two
doesn't,
positions that need to be mentioned right there
Okay, where would they be mentioned at?
at the bottom. The ESD
How would you,
provides 2 full-time dispatchers.
okay, I mean, that's a fact, we could put that in there.
They do.
Yeah.
That's part of this operations.
Okay,
Dispatchers.
okay. I think that's something that can be easily done. Has anybody got a problem with that? Derek?
I don't have a problem with it.
Okay, just making sure. Organizational and structure, chain of command, has anybody got a?
I have an extra also.
Yeah.
If we add an extra support for Denise, an admin person. She's gonna have a lot on her hands.
Well, yeah, I mean, later on as that comes up, there will be, but the thing is that what you're gonna see is these deputy chiefs and assistant chiefs, they're already gonna be doing, the jobs and the roles that they've already been doing. And, they've been doing it for quite some time. But now, because of the buy-in and the software and the accountability, it's actually now that it's underneath an organizational structure, the job's going to get a little bit easier to do. And so I don't really anticipate needing any admin right now as of the moment. Because like I said, these people are already going to be doing what they're already doing out there. It's just going to be
If the need
more
arises.
strength. But if the need does arise, it's just like anything else we'll
I
do.
don't think it needs to go in there.
Right.
Right,
Unless y'all
because
want-
I wouldn't directly be over.
No, that would be
any
underneath
advance.
the fire chief.
She comes down even before the fire chief off to the side of the board.
Right.
She's a board person.
But you
not
see the
a-
need, which has changed.
Yes, so but I wouldn't have direct, oversight over
No, that would be
that.
underneath. That would be underneath the.
I would just
fire chief.
advise the board on what's going on with said.
But I would think, just like along with anything else, as anything comes up, if we needed that role or that function, we would address it at that time. But I really don't see the need for that at the moment. I mean, sure, if we had lots of money out there and just could
It's gonna-
fill lots of positions, but we
Just to clear your mind, you know, here you go.
yeah, no, I got you. Was everybody good with the auxiliary staff and personnel being managed at a local station level from now? Okay.
What is defined as auxiliary?
Well, that's a great question because traditionally speaking, most of the auxiliary personnel out there are the people that are inside the station. They usually are dealing with the fundraise. They're not your first line people. They're not usually the people that are putting on fire gear, going on the fire calls, and doing them kind of things. They're more of like fundraiser type events. Some departments use them for community outreach.
Well, some,
and things like
not
that.
us, but some use for rehab, some use that.
Yes, rehab, showing up to scenes and stuff. And that's why I was talking about earlier. We want to take care of these people. Just because someone's 70 years old, they don't want to put on fire gear anymore. I don't blame them. At 70 years old, I don't want to put on fire gear no more. But I would still like to show up and help and volunteer. If there's an accident or an incident scene, I'd like to bring coffee to them or rehab supplies or any way that I could possibly still help the fire department. So we'll get them people the things they need, and uniforms.
I got a question. How would you classify people that wanted to volunteer? There's a lot of stuff on a fire ground that you don't have to be a firefighter one to do. Rolling hose, putting gear back on the truck. If we have people that want to help
Absolutely.
but don't want to fight fire,
Here's the deal, and
is that under auxiliary or something else?
That would, under my definition and opinion, that would be under auxiliary. They would have to receive a level of training, obviously, to know how the structure works, how the chain of command works, how to identify hazards and hazard zones, and operate underneath the command staff as well. And you don't want them to where they're going to be in a position where they're going to get hurt and do them things. But they do have a desire. Anybody out there has a desire to volunteer, whether that's baking cookies, cleaning the station, bringing rehab, driving a rehab pickup truck, or showing up to a scene to roll a hose. And that's where I kind of say that would fall into it'll be in the outlined with the SOGs and the fire chief and the command staff. But everybody as a whole will manage that a little bit different at station level because different communities have different auxiliary type members and things that they want to do. So, but yes, that would be short. That would be auxiliary type
I
function.
know that the SOGs and SOPs or SOGs would address the auxiliary, basically their role, but if you're going to assign any requirements for training, which like maybe an operations level or awareness level of anything, whether that's hazmat, maybe that should be outlined in here as well, because we're putting, certain qualifications and requirements for all the other ones except for auxiliary, which leads to believe that they don't need anything. Right?
Well, and for the simple fact, there's a lot of things that aren't in this outline, and that's because there are 9 different departments out there right now, and this board does not know the community like you guys know, and that's why under the organizational model that we presented, your assistant chiefs will get with the deputy chiefs and the fire chief. You guys will get together and collaborate together as a whole and talk about your community needs. And some things as a whole, you're going to be able to streamline and say across the board, yes, this is what's defined and this is what will be done in all areas. And then other areas under special type circumstances, events, or operations, it's going to change. Just like it would would in any other fire department when it comes to a special operation, whether that's, you know, an auxiliary thing or rope rescue or a hazmat incident or a swift water incident. Everybody can't just go out and do. Everybody's got to know where they fall within that organization and the roles and the SFGs are taking.
Will we keep any of the admin staff within the department as far as like secretary, treasurer? Obviously, the budget's not going to be, it's going to be different than it is now. We're not going to have to manage our own budget. It's going to be the ESD budget, so that would be Denise. But are we going to keep, like, for example, the secretary role, the assistant chief, or whatever that is in that department? I mean, I think
That's
beneficial.
department specific, and that's something that'll have to be talked about during the transition process, because what you're talking about is different than other departments have, because some departments, their secretaries and so on and so forth makes up their entire board, and their board has particular roles and functions and responsibilities that they do inside of that. And it's
Should that
different
not be a standard?
well, once you come to the table and we come up with a transition as far as that part goes, and the fire chief and that particular assistant chief is kind of the first ones to it. We haven't had that problem with the last transition, or don't anticipate it with the second department that's coming on to transition. But I don't know. I don't think that it would be. I don't see it as being a major problem at all.
I mean, because the secretary, it depends on each department how they utilize their secretary. But if you're talking about doing data entry, you're talking about receiving, you know, information from each department, that would be hugely beneficial to any assistant chief. And you diversify the people.
If you have a volunteer that is a member of the department and that wants to be the secretary and help do reports, well, I don't know how that would exactly work, but there's certain data like inventory and stock and stuff like that. Maybe kind of merge over to the side of like a quartermaster or something like that would be fine. As far as report writing and stuff goes, that should be done by the officer on the truck or something like that. So,
The various integration is going to change a lot of how that works.
yeah, so we'll deal with that. But yes, where I'm going is that through the collaboration of all the departments and everybody that we have out there, if a person wants to do nothing more than to show up to a department, volunteer their time, and do secretarial type duties, or quartermaster type duties, or rehab type stuff, there's a spot in every station and every community for them people, and we just need to decide how it is that fits into this. But I don't really think that that's a major issue at all.
And to his comment or his question about rolling up hose, that would probably be addressed in SOPs on when you can be at the scene as opposed to, if you're at the scene during the event, you could be a hazard.
I would let you, assistant chiefs and deputy chiefs, and the fire chief, I would let you guys figure out that.
So that all has to be in the SOP.
Just anything that's not, just like anything that's not outlined or discussed that has a particular role falls back on. Right, if it's not being done, he has to do it. So I'm thinking quartermaster roles. I'm thinking secretary roles.
I think that's great, and I think that's all collaboration that needs to happen with inside of the command staff. And I would really strongly urge the board from just staying away from that kind of stuff and letting you guys run that. And that's why we said that we'll manage that at the station level and the department level, and then the board will kind of deal with the other issues and stuff. So I'm pretty sure you guys will be able to figure out what to do with auxiliary staff. So, is there any more questions?
We're definitely not in the business of micromanaging.
Yeah, no, we don't want to. Organizational changes, such as fire chief recommendation.
You got PAT on everybody.
That was over in my other slide. I mean, we can put it in there as well.
PAT.
And I'm personally good with it if a person, come in and they already require their department, not necessarily going with it again. We'll leave that up to the fire chief. Obviously, we made our fire chief go through a true PAT, professional top level.
You do have down the next position down there.
Oh yeah, basic firefighter. So whatever this position right here, firefighter at the lowest level has, that even though we're asking the deputy and assistant chief to have different things, they're required to have that too. So if they've already done one with their department chiefs, that's going to be up to them, their command staff, of how they do that, whether they, one and done, or to yearly do it as an annual evaluation. Me personally, I'm a big annual evaluation guy, making sure everybody does it just to keep us all honest. Because even me, if we didn't do it every year, I would pack on a few extra pounds. It might not fit my gear, so I think it's a good thing. But I'm gonna let the departments do that as far as that goes.
How will it be allowed for existing personnel?
You might consider adding hazmat awareness. To go to a wreck, you need that.
Hazmat awareness and ops, yes, absolutely.
I mean, to be a regular firefighter, you're not required firefighter 2. I don't necessarily know that you need to require hazmat operations, but awareness, I think you should. If you're getting firefighter 1, you should.
Right.
The way the new SFMA breaks down, you don't have to search. So
Yeah.
Well, they broke it out to where you can have a firefighter 1, but not have an awareness cert.
Problems or anything they would like to see on this?
I don't see grandfathers anywhere.
Well, it's not really a position on here talking specifically about a grandfather clause, other than people will be given the time to achieve the goals and the requirements that's met there. If we want something in there that says a grandfather clause, but I would almost rather not put specifically a grandfather clause in there saying, oh, everybody's grandfather. Because then if you have somebody that doesn't meet any of these qualifications or certifications, at what extent are you actually a grandfather? And that's why.
I'm looking more toward the command staff.
Well, what qualification do you waive? If they're grandfathered, you might have to waive one of the qualifications. Which qualification would you waive?
Yeah, and this is such a very, very light list, and I kept it light for a reason. And then if, later on down the road, the fire chief and the command staff say, man, you really did us a disservice. We really need this, this, and that. And then we're going to say, well, okay, put this, this, and that on there. But to start off, I didn't want to list out a mile long where this person's, they look like they're going to apply to be the fire chief for the city of, San Antonio Fire Department or,
Brian, as you were scrolling, I may have missed it, but is there anywhere in there where you specifically address that if that, I know you're given a time period, but it doesn't address that the board or the ESD is going to fund that class? It just says that you're required to have it. It doesn't say that you guys are going to pay for it. Okay, there you go.
That's what I wanted to do. Which one was it?
May need to get an IT person.
Yeah. So you're right that I didn't put that in there. That is something that we need to put in there if you want to make note of that. That's a good catch.
For the training, you mean?
Yeah, anything. I would put in anything, something similar, like if the county requires it, that
The county pays for it.
it, whether that's you're a jet firefighter or you're,
Yeah, I think that I had it on one of my previous slides on there before, and I know I've talked about it more than once, but it is something that I need to put in there.
Just touch this.
I may have missed it.
Touch that top left slide. Or
I
bottom.
don't know that it was on there either, but I know we did talk about it.
I know he said it, but if we're gonna address it, might as well.
Yeah, if you click back on it.
It's gonna have to be a view, what they're viewing, probably under view.
Far right, left one.
Yeah, right
There you go.
And then slide to slide, or no. Focus.
Okay, get.
Oh, go to read, but you got it in the print, man.
Yeah.
Where is it? All the way
Yeah,
up
all the
to
way
that
over
side.
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's.
Getting worse.
So you got two.
I got 2 pages, that's fine.
Back to this, remember, you got it. Brian, leave it to you.
Yeah, that's it.
Wrong figures.
I don't remember seeing this.
qualifications.
Yeah, qualifications, so we're gonna add a clause in there basically stating that any requirement, qualification, or certification that a volunteer is required to have, that the department, fire department, and the ESD board will not only make sure that we put the bill on it and pay for it, but also give them an adequate avenue to obtain that, whether that's in-house or give them the time and extension needed to go and get that signed. Good catch, by the way. This is something that I particularly, this is talking about scheduling and asset tracking software that's out there. This is what's going to allow us to do staffing, scheduling, keeping up with assets and personnel and certifications and so on and so forth. There's several different programs out there like PS Tracks,